"You selfish trash," my mother, Angela, shrieked across the terrace of the Sapphire Hotel. The ceramic pot in her hand tipped, just slightly, and then the heat hit me. Freshly brewed coffee poured straight over my head. It slammed into my scalp like fire, searing instantly. It ran down my neck, soaked into my thrifted gray hoodie, and turned the fabric heavy against my skin. The pain was immediate, sharp, shocking, so sudden it stole the air from my lungs. But what came after was worse. It wasn't a gasp, it wasn't someone rushing to help. It was laughter. My brother, Christopher, and my sister, Amanda, already had their phones out, filming. Their screens were aimed at me like weapons. Tiny red recording lights blinked like malicious eyes. I sat there, coffee dripping from my eyelashes, heat radiating down my spine, and something inside me clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The bridge wasn't just burned. It had been nuked. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's here with me. I stood up. I didn't wipe my face. I didn't look at my mother, now breathing hard, chest rising and falling like she'd just finished a sprint fueled by rage. I walked straight toward the hotel bathroom, my boots striking the marble floor in a steady, controlled rhythm. Inside, I locked the door and leaned over the sink. My reflection stared back at me. My hair was matted with dark liquid. My skin was turning blister red along my hairline and neck, already swelling with heat. The urge to scream rose fast, like a living thing clawing up my throat. I wanted to howl. I wanted to storm back out there, flip the table, shatter their expensive plates and fragile egos. I wanted them to feel even a fraction of what was burning through my skin. But then I looked closer. Into my own eyes. They weren't watery. They were cold. Because I knew the truth. If I screamed, I gave them content. If I cried, I gave them satisfaction. They fed on chaos, on noise, on dysfunction. My mother, with her image-obsessed perfectionism. My siblings, with their starving hunger for attention. They were vampires, living off reaction. They wanted a fight, because a fight meant I still cared. A fight meant we were still playing the game. But silence? Silence was a mirror. When you don't scream back at a monster, the monster is left screaming into the void, forced to hear the echo of its own ugliness. And by refusing to give them my rage, I was refusing to give them fuel. I grabbed a handful of paper towels and dabbed the worst of the coffee from my neck. The skin was tender, already starting to peel. A hiss slipped through my teeth, but I kept my face neutral. I wasn't going to give them a single frame, 1 second of footage where I looked broken. Then I unlocked the door, and I walked back out to the terrace. The terrace went quiet when I returned. Not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that crackles, like the air right before lightning hits. Christopher was still standing there with his phone raised, smirking like he'd just captured something priceless. Amanda's fingers were flying over her screen, already typing, already crafting the perfect caption, the perfect punchline. And my mother, Angela, stood with her arms crossed, chin lifted, waiting for me to apologize, waiting for me to collapse into the family. I walked to the table. I didn't sit. I reached into the damp pocket of my hoodie and pulled out my wallet with slow, deliberate precision, like every movement was calculated. Then I took out 4 crisp $20 bills. $80, exactly. My share of the breakfast I hadn't even touched. I placed the bills on the white tablecloth right beside the empty coffee pot. I flattened them, carefully, smoothing the edges until they lay perfectly neat, like an offering, like a receipt, like a final statement. Then I turned, and I walked away. That's right, Christopher called after me, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. I didn't stop. "Go cry in your truck," he shouted, laughing like he'd won. I kept walking. I didn't look back. Because the silence I left behind, my refusal to give them a reaction, was heavier than any scream could have been. It wasn't weakness. It was a door closing, locking, and being welded shut. They thought they'd won because they had the camera. They didn't realize they'd just filmed their own execution. I climbed into my 10-year-old Subaru. The cabin smelled like stale coffee and old fabric and heat. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the ignition, not from fear, from the adrenaline crash, sharp and delayed, like the body finally catching up to what the mind refused to show. I started the engine, pulled out of the hotel parking lot, merged onto the highway, and with every mile, I put distance between myself and the people who shared my DNA. And the craziest part? This war had started over something so small, it was almost funny. Almost. Christopher had cornered me before the food even arrived. He leaned in like we were sharing some private joke, like we were still close, like he hadn't spent years treating me like an outsider in my own family. "I need 50 grand, he said. Not asked, stated, like it was obvious, like it was already mine to give. "An investment," he added quickly, flashing that smile, the one that was all teeth and desperation. "For the dealership, inventory is tight. Luxury watches are hot right now." I stared at him, calm. He kept going. "I just need a bridge loan. You can put it on a credit card, Emma." He said my name like it was a lever he could pull. "You've got good credit, right?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't roll my eyes. I just said politely, "No." That one word cracked the veneer clean in half. His smile dropped, his eyes narrowed, and his voice turned sharp. "You're so selfish," he spat. "Mom pays for everything for us, and you can't even help with a loan?" That was the trigger. Not because I cared what he thought, but because my refusal exposed the truth. They weren't asking for help, they were demanding control. My family lived inside a paper tiger version of wealth, all shine, no substance. Christopher drove a leased Range Rover he was 2 payments behind on. Amanda called herself a lifestyle coach and lived in a condo funded by our parents' shrinking retirement savings. And my mother? Angela wore designer labels she bought on consignment, then returned after wearing them. Their entire existence was liabilities dressed up as assets, debt disguised as status, appearances masquerading as power. And they thought I was beneath them, because I lived quietly, because I didn't post, because I didn't chase their version of validation. They thought I was broke. They thought I was struggling, a freelance coder living in a cabin because I couldn't afford the city. They didn't know I had sold my AI safety company, SafeMind, to Google DeepMind 3 weeks ago for $110 million. They didn't know my net worth was sitting at nearly $250 million. They didn't know the poor cabin girl in front of them had enough capital to buy and sell their entire zip code. I looked down at my coffee-stained hoodie, at my worn jeans, and I felt something settle in my chest. Because I didn't own luxury. I owned freedom. I owned my truck. I owned my cabin. I owned my intellectual property. And the most dangerous thing I owned? The ability to say no without fear. That's why they hated me. Not because I was poor, but because they sensed my independence, and it terrified them. My scalp throbbed, a sharp reminder of what it cost. I kept driving, eyes on the road, already shifting gears in my mind. The emotional part of me wanted to curl up and grieve the mother I never had. But the logical part, the CEO part, was already filing the police report in my head. They wanted to teach me a lesson about my place in the family. They were about to learn a very expensive lesson about mine in the world. By the time I got home, the adrenaline had faded into something colder. My apartment was quiet, so quiet it felt unreal after the chaos of that terrace. The only sounds were the steady hum of the refrigerator and the sharp hiss of burn spray as I applied it along my hairline. The mirror didn't let me lie. A blister was forming behind my left ear. The skin along my neck looked raw, like it had been peeled back, angry, tender, violated. I didn't cover it. I wanted to see it. I wanted to remember exactly what $50,000 of rejection looked like on my body. My phone, sitting on the bathroom counter, lit up. Then again, and then it wouldn't stop, buzzing non-stop like an insect trapped under glass. I wiped my hands, picked it up, and for half a second, just half a second, I thought, maybe. An apology, a moment of shame, a voice message from my mother, trembling, finally realizing what she'd done. But no, it was TikTok. A notification. Someone had tagged me, or more accurately, tagged an old account I barely used anymore. My thumb hovered. I already knew what I was going to see. I opened the app. Christopher's face filled the screen, smug, filtered, brightened by that fake social media glow. And then the video started. There I was, sitting at the table, head bowed, coffee dripping from my chin, my mother screaming, and my brother's camera capturing every second like it was entertainment. The caption text flashed in bright, obnoxious yellow. When your broke sister tries to ruin brunch, putting out the trash. I stared at it, not blinking, not breathing properly. Then I scrolled. The comments were exactly what Christopher wanted, an instant crowd of strangers piling onto his narrative like wolves scenting blood. She looks like a wet rat. Serves her right. Stop mooching. And then Amanda, of course. Amanda had shared it to her Instagram story with a crying, laughing emoji and the words, "Karma is served hot." I set the phone down on the counter like it was radioactive. They were celebrating. They were drunk on likes, high on the dopamine of cruelty. They genuinely believed they'd won. In their minds, this was the end of the story. The trash gets taken out. The winners go back to their mimosas. But they didn't understand something. On the internet, context is currency, and their little market was about to crash. I didn't report the video. I didn't comment. I didn't beg. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I took screenshots. The post, the caption, the timestamps. Then I saved everything into a folder on my encrypted drive and labeled it with one word: evidence. And after that, I went into my kitchen and made myself tea. Not coffee. Never coffee again. I sat by the window, mug warm in my hands, and waited. Because the algorithm doesn't care about family. It cares about attention. And sooner or later, it finds the truth. By Monday morning, the air felt different. Heavy. Like that strange pressure drop right before a hurricane. I was in my home office, really just a converted bedroom in my cabin, overlooking the valley. My code was open on one screen. I was reviewing a new neural network architecture, trying to keep my mind in logic, in structure, in control. Then my personal phone rang. Not my work line, my cell phone. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my stomach tighten. Elena, head of public relations. I answered. "Elena?" She said, voice tight, controlled. "Have you seen Twitter?" "I've seen TikTok." I typed a command into my terminal, like I could outrun reality with keystrokes. "It breached containment," Elena said. That phrase landed like a diagnosis. "It hit tech Twitter about an hour ago. A former intern recognized you. The view count is at 4 million and climbing, straight up. They know who you are, Emma. They know you founded SafeMind. They know about the DeepMind acquisition. My fingers froze above the keyboard. 4 million and climbing. I pulled Twitter up on my second monitor. The hashtag SafeMind was trending. And there it was, right at the top, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, me on the cover of Wired, polished, composed, the kind of image people use to describe words like visionary and formidable. On the right, a blurry screenshot from Christopher's video. Me soaked in coffee, head bowed, burning, humiliated. The caption underneath read, "This family just assaulted one of the most important women in AI because she wouldn't loan them $50K. They have no idea she's worth 9 figures." The replies were an avalanche. Horror, disgust, rage. That's Angela Mercer. She's on the board of the Arts Council. Disgusting. Another person. This guy sells watches on commission and he's bullying a self-made multi-millionaire? The math isn't mathing. People were tagging brands, tagging companies, tagging news outlets. I watched the retweet count spin like a slot machine, numbers climbing too fast to process. Elena's voice cut through again. "Do you want us to issue a takedown? We can have it scrubbed. Harassment policy violation. It'll be gone in 10 minutes. I stared at the screen, at my own face, blurred and dripping. No, at my mother's rage, at my siblings' laughter. And I felt something settle, not panic, not shame, clarity. "No," I said. Elena paused. "Emma? Leave it up," I repeated, my voice calm. "Let it play." "It's humiliating," she said carefully. "It's not humiliating for me," I replied. "It's illuminating for everyone else." Silence. Then Elena exhaled. "Okay." I hung up, and I watched the narrative flip in real time. I wasn't the broke sister anymore. I was the underdog titan. The public didn't see a brunch argument. They saw parasites attacking the host. They wanted attention, so I decided right then I was going to give them the world. Tuesday morning arrived quietly, too quietly. Christopher was standing on the showroom floor of Timeless Luxury, adjusting his cuffs under the bright white lights. Glass cases gleamed, watches worth more than most people's cars sat perfectly aligned, ticking softly, precise, indifferent. He was probably checking his phone, waiting for more likes, more validation, still riding the high of his viral moment. He had no idea the ground beneath his feet had already liquefied, because over the weekend, my venture capital firm, Apex Ventures, had been very busy. We hadn't bought a watch. We had acquired the controlling stake in the parent company that owned his franchise rights. For us, it was a minor acquisition, a portfolio diversifier, but it gave me something very specific: authority. His manager approached him holding an iPad, face unreadable. "Christopher," he said, "corporate wants a word. Zoom meeting, now." Christopher straightened, smoothing his jacket. This was it, he probably thought. A promotion, a warning, a slap on the wrist. He didn't expect to see the regional director. He didn't expect HR, and he certainly didn't expect the third Zoom window, blacked out, labeled with a single word: ownership. "Mr. Mercer," the director began, voice clipped and professional, "we have received thousands of complaints regarding a video you posted." Christopher laughed nervously. "It's just a family thing." "Gross misconduct," the director continued. "Behavior damaging to brand reputation. Hostile conduct." "It's a private joke," Christopher stammered. "Just a joke." "There is nothing funny about assault," HR cut in, "and there is nothing private about 4 million views." Christopher's confidence collapsed in real time. His shoulders sagged, his face drained. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately," the HR rep said. "Security will escort you out." "You can't do this," Christopher blurted. "My sister." "Your sister," I said. I unmuted my microphone. I left the camera off, but my voice filled the room, crisp and amplified through the conference speakers. "Your sister is the majority shareholder of the holding company that signs your paychecks, Christopher." Silence. Thick. Absolute. "And she has a zero-tolerance policy for bullies." No one spoke. No one breathed. "Pack your desk," I continued, "and leave the demo watch." A pause. "You can't afford it." Then I ended the call. One down. And I knew, deep in my bones, they weren't finished. Not yet. They came to my gate on Thursday. It was inevitable, because when a narcissist loses control, they don't reflect. They attack. It's a psychological phenomenon called narcissistic collapse. The moment the mask cracks, the grandiose self-image punctures, and what spills out isn't remorse, it's rage. They can't process shame, so they convert it into aggression. They have to destroy the mirror that showed them what they really are. I watched them through the high-definition security monitors from the calm safety of my kitchen. Angela's luxury sedan, leased, of course, idled aggressively at the iron gates of my estate. I'd bought the property under an LLC 6 months ago, 20 acres of woodland, a modern glass fortress tucked deep into the trees, invisible from the road. They must have hired a private investigator to find the address. Angela slammed her hand on the intercom again and again, her face warped by the wide-angle camera. "Open this gate!" Angela screamed. The audio came through crisp and clean, filtered by the system's noise cancellation. "You tricked us! You let us think you were poor! You liar!" Of course, that was their new story. Not that they assaulted me, not that they humiliated me, but that I had deceived them. In their twisted logic, my success was betrayal because I hadn't shared it. They felt entitled to the wealth they mocked me for not having. "We know you're in there, Emma," Christopher yelled, leaning toward the camera. "You owe me my job! You owe us!" I pressed the talk button. I didn't open the gate. My voice came through the speaker, flat and metallic, stripped of emotion. "You are trespassing on private property." "Trespassing?" Angela shrieked, voice cracking. "I am your mother." Then her face contorted like she was choking on fury. "You have millions, millions, and you let me wear last season's coat? You let us struggle, you ungrateful, manipulative—" "I am not your mother," I corrected calmly. "I am the selfish trash you poured coffee on, remember?" Angela's mouth opened like she couldn't believe I'd said it. "Open the gate," Christopher snapped. "We need to talk about compensation." Angela nodded violently. "You embarrassed us globally. We're going to sue you for defamation." "Truth is an absolute defense against defamation," I replied, "and the video you filmed is all the evidence I need." I glanced at the second monitor. A black SUV was turning into my driveway behind their car, lights flashing, silent at first, then brighter as it approached. "Also," I added, voice steady, "I have a restraining order pending based on the assault." Angela froze. Christopher froze. On the screen, blue lights reflected off the glossy paints of Angela's sedan like a warning from the universe. "The police arriving behind you are here to enforce it." Angela turned, panic replacing rage in a blink. Christopher's aggression evaporated instantly, like a cowardly candle snuffed out. "Goodbye," I said, and I cut the feed. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was expensive. It was triple-pane glass, high-end security, absolute safety, And for the first time in my life, their noise couldn't reach me. 2 weeks later, the dust had settled thick and permanent over my family's old life. Christopher was unemployable in the city. The viral video was the first result whenever anyone searched his name. It didn't matter what he applied for. It didn't matter how he tried to explain it. The internet doesn't forget. Amanda lost her sponsorship deals one by one. Brands don't like influencers who laugh at assault. They don't like karma captions over a woman's pain. They don't like cruelty, especially when the receipts exist. And Angela? Angela was essentially under house arrest, not because the law forced her, but because shame did. She couldn't show her face at the clubs and committees where she built her identity like a fragile sculpture. Not after the world saw the real her. I sat on the deck of my cabin, mountain air cool against skin that was finally healing. The burns were fading, but the memory stayed sharp. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. When I answered, the voice on the other end was calm and formal. "Miss Mercer, this is the attorney representing your grandmother, Rose." I sat up straighter. "She wanted you to know immediately," he said. "She has rewritten the will, the estate, the trust, the property. It's all being transferred to you." I blinked. "I don't need it," I said honestly. "I have enough." There was a pause, like he was reading something in front of him. "She knows," the lawyer replied, and that is exactly what she said. My throat tightened. He continued, voice gentler now. She said, "Give it to Emma. She is the only one who didn't need it, which is why she is the only one who deserves it." I didn't speak for a moment. Then I thanked him quietly and ended the call. I looked out at the tree line, wind moving through the branches like a slow exhale from the earth itself. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel giddy. I felt light, like something heavy had finally been cut off my body. Their expectations, their cruelty, their noise, all of it, gone. I picked up my phone, opened the family group chat one last time and stared at the names. Angela, Christopher, Amanda. A lifetime of manipulation and performance sitting in one little screen. Then I pressed delete group. And just like that, they were gone. I whistled for my dog. He came running, nails tapping against the wood, tail wagging like he'd never known a world with chaos in it. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, and drove toward the horizon. In the rearview mirror, nothing. Just empty road fading into distance. And ahead of me, everything. The road was entirely mine.